tell you what happened to these young people. So they come to school for 5 years. It's secondary school. Primary school's a bit different. They tend to enjoy primary school. They start not enjoying it towards the end, but primary schools are tiny. Everyone knows your name. You're a big fish in a small pond by the time you're at the top of primary school. Then you get kicked out. You end up in the first year of secondary school. All of a sudden, no one knows your name. You're a tiny fish in a big pond. And the first couple of months, you begin to hate it. And then you realise, I don't understand these lessons. You don't say anything, so you fall further and further behind. And eventually you give up because I'm stupid. I don't get anything here. I've got other kids laughing at me that I don't know the answer. So they tune out and end up not turning up. And by the end of 5 years, we wonder why they leave angry and disenfranchised at society. We've tortured them every day for 5 years.
Hello and welcome to Reasoned UK with me, Darren Grimes. As always, if you enjoyed today's interview, please do consider hitting that subscribe button and the little notification bell. You can also consider supporting our GoFundMe page. The link to that is in the description. It really does help a lot, and we're excitingly halfway towards securing our target. So tar very much for your support. Anyway, that's enough housekeeping. Let me introduce today's guest. So I'm very excited about this one actually, and I know I say that every single week, but I really am. Nick Buckley MBE is a founder of a charity which he set up at the end of 2011. He funded the charity for the first 2 years himself using redundancy money and his own personal savings, working full-time for free at that point. Over 9 years, the charity grew to employ 20 staff, managing 2 community centres, supporting homeless individuals off the streets and into jobs, working on the streets a dozen times a week to engage and support young people to make positive choices and boost their life chances and outcomes. Now, the charity extolled the virtues of personal responsibility and challenged lazy excuses for being unable to improve your own lot in life. And for these valiant efforts and the work as a community champion, Nick received an MBE in recognition of his dedication to voluntary services and the local community. And reading all of this, you must be thinking, my God, what a man, what a story. Stop there, Darren, let's end it here. Well, my friends, this all came crashing down for a period earlier this year when Nick wrote a blog post on the blog platform Medium in which he described the Black Lives Matter movement as postmodern neo-Marxists who were calling for the destruction of Western democracy and our way of life. He was sacked by his charity's trustees for doing so. We'll be discussing all of this and more. So hello, Nick. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you very much for giving up your time to join Reasoned.
No, more than welcome.
Now, Nick, could you start by telling me a little bit about your upbringing? You know, single mother, council estate in South Manchester. Was it a happy childhood? What did your peers at school end up doing with their lives? Could you give us a little bit of background?
Yeah, sure. So I was brought up in South Manchester on a notorious council estate. Single parent mum. I went to a really, really poor school that was failing. It was failing that bad that they closed it down. So I was one of the last kids to go to that school before they closed it down completely as a school. The luck, we all have luck in life. My luck was I came from a very loving household. No money, but, you know, I was loved. I felt taken care of. It was a struggle growing up. I've started writing a book, so it's made me start thinking about the past and who I am and what happened to me and what I've overcome. And I've started thinking about those things. Is that a book
about your life, is it? Or a book about your experiences?
It's going to be more about, to begin with, it's going to be about working with children on the streets, working with kids on the streets, because that's really what I've been doing for 20 years. And I'm going to bring in different personal experiences, because I do that work and I'm good at that work because of my background, because I was one of those kids hanging around on the street doing nothing. I wasted the first 30 years of my life. I didn't go to university. I thought I was Del Boy off Only Fools and Horses. I wanted to make £1 million in one go. So I was always looking for this super deal. I was, sometimes I was slightly dodgy, slightly breaking the law. And I gave nothing back to society and to community. I was basically always taking. I wasn't evil, I wasn't a criminal, but I was always taking. And then I got a job then at Manchester Council, by coincidence. And I started working with people whose job it was to help the community, whose job it was to help other people who weren't themselves. And I was new to that, and I'd never met people like that before. And I realised that I was a caring person, and I realised that I had personal experiences in life that could help other people. And some big bosses noticed the work I did, and then I was promoted and I got a much better job, and I was working with kids with the police. So the police would go out on a Friday, Saturday night, young people who weren't involved in criminality, but the police thought, you're beginning to cross the line here, would be referred to me. I would either call at the house or speak to the parents and say, this is the line you're going down, and these will be the consequences. And no point dealing with you when you broke the law. It's all too late. Let's get in there early. Let's give the young people information so they can make some positive choices. But most importantly, let's have a conversation with the parent. The state should have been bringing up other people's kids. So give the parent the information they need, and they will be better parents.
I was honestly really struck by the story that you told in, I think, the Critic magazine. I've been reading so many articles by you this morning, but there was one story, one anecdote in which, and I assume this has happened more than once, where you had to actually sit and work out how much a kid was making on the street selling drugs, and it worked out at something like £3 an hour. And you were like, well, you can make a hell of a lot more money if you're employed in legal means,
Absolutely. So one of my managers came up with that exercise. So working in the streets, talking to kids, and we're saying to them, do you want a job? We'll help you get a job. We'll do a CV with you. We'll help you apply. We'll take you to the interview. Whatever is your issue, we'll help you get over it so you can get a job. And a lot of time the kids are messing around and going, no, I want to be a drug dealer. I am a drug dealer. I sell cannabis. And most of the time it's bravado. They're just having a laugh at a joke, which is fine. And what we do is we sit down with them. We get a flip chart and pen. Again, this is all done on the streets. This isn't done in the community centre. We sit down and we say, right, what time do you start work? 10 o'clock in the morning. What time do you finish? Or maybe 1 o'clock in the next morning. How much do you sell? How much do you get out of that? Blah, 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 blah. And we work it all out. And normally it works out to about £3.50 an hour. And we say to them, you can earn £8.50 stacking shelves in Asda. Why are you running around breaking the law, risking getting robbed? Because if you get robbed and your stash gets taken off you, the person above you wants all that back. So it's not like, oh, never mind, you got robbed, don't worry about it. The police aren't going to come through your door when you're stacking shelves at Asda. And just because you're stacking shelves at Asda doesn't mean that's where your life ends. Get that job, keep on working with us. And then, we can get you onto trainee managers program, or we'll get you a job somewhere else. But the first step of the ladder is to get a job, get something to put on your CV. And some of the young people, you can see the light just go off in their head. And what they tend to do is whisper to you, I'm interested in that, but I don't want to talk here. And we said, we'll meet you tomorrow afternoon on your own in the library, or in McDonald's, we'll meet you then. Because it's hard for them to admit they want a better life when there are 8 friends around them, all laughing and joking and calling them names. And what tends to happen is once we've got one person a job, the kids who were laughing at the first person then speak to us and whisper to us, you got Billy a job, can you help me? And then there's that knock-on effect. And don't get me wrong, it's not as easy as this, and we have more failures than we have successes. But every success we have chips away again at this notion that life is impossible and you can't get out of the ghetto. So it's about chipping away, and we do chip away all the time.
You overcame a stammer as a kid. I'm wondering to what extent that taught you about perseverance and patience, because in your line of work, and as you've just said out there are more failures than there are successes as far as these kids going down the wrong path is concerned. Do you think you see a bit of a path that you could have taken as a kid, and you've got that patience and perseverance because you recognize that your life chances could have been vastly different, and you sort of see a bit of yourself in your own story in some of these kids.
Oh, absolutely. And I was going down the wrong path. You know, I've been going down the wrong path for 30 years. Again, not an evil path, not a criminality path, but I wasn't making good choices for myself. I was always full of excuses. This time next year, I'll have a big deal this year and I'm going to be someone special and someone big. And it's just silliness living in a dream world. But, you know, these young people we're working with are just like me and they have challenges. And what happens is a young person has a challenge, fails, and then says to himself, oh, I didn't like that. I'm never going to try again because it's awful when you fail. But I came from a different era. I came from a point in time in our country when, you know, most of us had nothing. So I did overcome a stammer. I was stuttering up to my early mid-teens. And as I wrote in the article, or one of the articles I wrote, I had to stand up in class when I was 11 to read Bilbo Baggins' The Hobbit. And every kid had to take their turn to stand up. And it was horrendous. You know, I'd be there going, Bilbo. And in my mind, I know the next word is Baggins. I've got another bloody bee coming in. It was horrendous. And, you know, the amount of Mickey my friends took. What I learned from that was I could overcome. And what I learned was to be the first person to take the Mickey out of me was me. Because once you've done that, you've taken the power away from other people to have a go, to criticize you. Because how can you insult someone who's already been insulting themselves? So that was a lesson I learned from that. And I remember one parents' evening, my mum mentioned to the English teacher, why did you make Nick stand up and do that? You know, he really doesn't like it. And the teacher told my mum, and I was sat there, and she said, well, Nick has a stammer, but I don't want anybody in my class to give up. I don't want anyone in my class to think, oh, I've got a disability or there's something wrong with me. Therefore, I now have a reason in life not to read in public or do something. These challenges are there for you to overcome. And we've all got different challenges. And it was hard work for me. And I did eventually overcome it. But young people these days, not all young people, some young people are really resilient and can overcome. And it's not so much the young people, it's the adults in society who are always the first to give young people an excuse not to try. It's because you're poor, it's because you're black, it's because you're gay, it's because you live in this area, it's because of whatever. Here's a great excuse for you not to try. And if you've got adults telling you all the time, there's no point you trying, mate, because everyone's out to get you and the system's set up to make you fail. If you hear that message every day, why would you try?
I think
Why would you try if you've been told by every adult and society that there's no point you trying? So therefore you don't try and you don't give up. Well, I always knew, and I don't know where this came from, but I always knew that I could achieve. I always knew that I was better than people thought I was. And part of that might have been paranoia because of my stutter, because when you're stuttering, people automatically think you're an idiot. It was a disability. Let's be honest. It wasn't seen as a disability then. But if you turn the clocks back now, I could. If I was a kid now, I'd be suing people because it'd be discriminatory because of my disability. But I never saw it as a disability. I saw it more of an infliction on me. That's something I had to overcome. And then one of my friends was fat and overweight, and we tore into him because he was fat. One of my other friends wore braces for 3-4 years, big metal ones. We called him Metal Mickey. We tore into him for years. So it wasn't like I sat there being a victim. We were tearing into each other all the time. I had to look slightly harder for other people to find something to Mickey out of, but there's always something there. And that's how you build resilience. That's how you bond as men and boys. It's that Mickey taking. It's that building that relationship. And it's not about sitting there crying, going, oh, woe me. Get over it. If you fail, get back up, brush yourself down, learn from what's happened and start again.
Well, speaking of learning from what's happened, you've argued elsewhere, Nick, that after 2 decades of working with young people in Manchester, you can pinpoint the 2 main indicators that inform you and other youth workers, that a young person is likely to make poor choices in life. And they are as follows: no father being present at home and failing at their education. I wonder, Nick, to what extent are the two of them linked? Are you more likely to fail at education if you do come from a fatherless home? And why do you reckon it is that the father being present is so important?
So all the stats show this. You do better in life on almost everything if you have a father at home. That's not to say that sometimes you shouldn't have a father at home. If your father is a violent paedophile, murderer, then you're going to do better in life if he's not in your life. So this isn't a blanket any father will do. That obviously isn't the case. But in general, there's a fantastic book out there by Warren Farrell called The Boy Crisis. He goes into all of this with all scientific reports, talking about the kids who join ISIS. The vast majority of them don't have fathers at home. Same with the girls who join ISIS, don't have fathers at home. And again, just because you don't have a father at home, it doesn't mean you're going to be a criminal, you're going to fail education. I didn't have a father at home. I didn't end up like that. So these aren't blanket, things we can say about people, but the stats are there. All I can say is in 20 years of experience, if I'm working, especially when I worked for the council, I spent 5 years working with the police in the council. For those young people, almost every single one of them who was in trouble with the police that we're trying to work with, I only can think of one child over 5 years who had a father at home. Everybody else, no father at home. And when you started talking to them and finding out their education, most of them were not at school. And the ones who were at school hardly went and weren't predicted to get any qualifications whatsoever because they're hardly there, kicking off, getting kicked out. So when we're working with young people on the streets now, they're the two sort of bits of information we're trying to get straight away to work out where this young person is in life. No father at home, rings an alarm bell. Failing at education, kicked out of education, second alarm bell, which means we really need to work with this young person and have some serious conversations and try to help. So we can't help everybody. So we're not there to help the well-adjusted kids who live in Bramhall and Wimslow in Greater Manchester. They're going to do okay in life anyway because they've got middle-class parents, they've got plenty of money, they go to a good school. Some of them will fail, but they failed because they made poor choices, not because they went to a poor school and poor parenting. But the young people we're trying to work with are the ones we know. If we can get in there early and we can change their life, changing those lives will have a huge impact on society.
Nick,
because
how much is a sort of bigotry of low expectations here? Because you also write about a lack of discipline, parental engagement, and a fixation on university progression as well. Is there a view, do you think, with some of our political leaders and others that these kids just aren't going to amount to anything, so you needn't bother? Or not?
That's how it can come across. But I don't think anybody thinks that. I really don't think that's no one's intention. No one thinks that.
For full disclosure, I grew up on a council estate in County Durham, and I definitely felt, I had one. I trained to be a hairdresser when I left school, and I had one careers advisor who just said to me, "You're not going to be able to go to university. Go and work in hair." And as it happens, I'm glad I did, because I was deeply unconfident as a child, and actually being forced into a public facing role like that, where you've got to meet and greet strangers, that massively built my confidence, which was shattered whilst I was at school. And I wonder to what extent there is a bigotry of low expectations with these kids just being told you're never going to amount to anything, so don't bother, pet,
There is, but I don't think it's as obvious. I don't think the people who do it think they're doing it.
Yeah.
For me, it comes down to rights and responsibilities. We bang on to young people all the time about their rights. And we say to young people, any lifestyle choice, anything you do is as equal and as valuable as what anybody else does. And we know that's not true. So therefore, young people are growing up going, right, I can make any decision I want to make. And if we try to direct them or influence them, then they're looking at that sometimes and thinking, Let me give you a good example. So I spent 5 years knocking on doors, speaking to parents about their kids who we thought were going to get involved in criminality before they got involved. And I came to realise after several years, what I was doing in those houses, speaking to those parents, was I was criticising their culture. And the vast majority of them were white working class. Mm. And I was sat in our houses saying, basically, the way you're bringing up your children is, and I don't want to say as harsh as this, but what I was basically saying was, the way you're bringing up children isn't good enough. And the fact you have no value of education as a parent means your child's failing education. And that's cultural in your family and in your micro area where you live. And when you're saying that to people, but we're brought up in an area where culture is everything, and we make decisions, and your decisions are as equal as everybody else's. But low expectations, really, and university is a great one. We're going to send all our young people to university. 18% of our young people leave school without hitting the bare minimum of qualifications.
Yeah.
18%. And we're banging on about university. And a lot of the courses now in university aren't worth the paper they're written on. You know, we've got people stacking shelves with, you know, degrees in women's dance studies and this and that and media studies. And it's like, why did you spend 3 years and 50 grand to do this? You're still unemployable now as you was 4 years ago. Why are you wasting your money? But it's become a business. And we need to tell young people and give young people opportunities. What I would like to see is a different type of secondary school. I'd like to see parents have more and more choice. At least then, if they make poor choices, well, it was your choice instead of us inflicting choices on them. I'd like to see technical schools for 11 to 15-year-olds where they choose to go, not dumping grounds for low academic kids or kids with behavioural differences. This is a proper school where people choose at 11 years old, I want to go there. And they'll do English and maths and things like that, but a lot of practical stuff, a lot of job-ready stuff. And the two examples I can give, we'll have a bright kid coming in who hates school, who we know is bright, but isn't going to last 5 years in a normal secondary school. Get him into that school. He could leave at 15 as a programmer. He's done 5 years as a programmer. Do you know how much you earn programming games in the games industry? It could be £100,000 in a couple of years. And then let's flip it on the head. Let's say we've got a young person who's not academically gifted, who we also know is going to fail school for different reasons. They can come in and they leave at 15 and they can be fully trained in the hospitality industry as a chambermaid or working on reception or a bricklayer. Do you know how much bricklaying and plumbers earn?
Plumbers, yeah.
And there's hundreds of hotels in Manchester City Centre. They all could work here.
And we actually need these skills as well, don't we?
Absolutely. And let me tell you what happened to these young people. So they come to school for 5 years at secondary school. Primary school's a bit different. They tend to enjoy primary school. They start not enjoying it towards the end. But primary schools are tiny. Everyone knows your name. You're a big fish in a small pond by the time you're at the top of primary school. Then you get kicked out. You end up in the first year of secondary school. All of a sudden, no one knows your name. You're a tiny fish in a big pond. And the first couple of months, you begin to hate it. And then you realise, I don't understand these lessons. You don't say anything, so you fall further and further behind. And eventually you give up because I'm stupid. I don't get anything here. I've got other kids laughing at me that I don't know the answer. So they tune out and end up not turning up. And by the end of 5 years, we wonder why they leave angry and disenfranchised at society. We've tortured them every day for 5 years. We've made them feel inferior and stupid, and by the end of the 5 years they're almost unemployable, and we go, oh, that didn't work for them. Well, we know it doesn't work for them. Why are we doing a one size fits all the time? I'm
totally with you. I mean, I've got a brother that's 11 months younger than I am, and he is vastly different to me, you know, and I really think a technical education would have been absolutely perfect for him. He's not academically inclined, but given those skills and making himself employable would have been ideal for him. And instead, he was in and out of precarious, factory work that was hit and miss, on and off. And I'm really concerned with the way in which, I visualize our current system, which is a bit like a factory line of battery hens, which we assume each child is being fattened up and primed for university. And I think you make the case for school choice better than most people I've heard, to be honest with you. And I wonder I'm curious as to how you feel about those who want to deny kids school choice, who say that actually, there should be this one-size-fits-all position. I'm thinking especially of the Labour Party, who wants to close free schools, for example, and are against things like grammar schools or any other form of education, diversity in education. How does that make you feel? Do you just think they're misguided, or do you think this is part of some, Marxist ideology?
I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt unless they prove me wrong. I've met lots of politicians, from prime ministers all the way down to leaders of councils and councillors, and everyone I've ever met has been a lovely, decent person and has been in it for the right reasons. I may disagree with their politics and how they want to achieve something, but they've always been in it for the right reasons. How can we not give people choice? That's how we drive up standards. I think we should let some schools fail, as in close them down, because parents don't want to send. If you've got a school where parents don't want to send their kids, why are we forcing parents to send their kids to a place they don't want to send their kids? It makes no sense. And if you want to be a bit paranoid, you could say, if we can control the education of children, that's how we can control the masses. Because you give me a child at 7 and I'll give you a man. And that's, again, if we've got teachers who've all been to university, and I'll argue to some point there's no need for all teachers to go to university. Someone gave a great example several years ago that for Alex Ferguson to work in a school and be a teacher, he'd have to go to university. Any school who could get Alex Ferguson to work in a classroom should be snapping his hand off, because he could teach him so much about so many things that you don't need a degree for that. Some people have innate ability. Some people have a lifetime experience that we need to get into schools. But instead, we've got a conveyor belt of people coming out of universities who, some of them have been brainwashed into all this critical race theory nonsense. And because they've been led to believe you are now superior because you've been to university, therefore the best thing for your children is to get them to university, because they can be like you then. They can be enlightened and they can be part of the elite. So I understand governments and teachers pushing university, because for 100 years, people like me and you never had a chance of going to university. But it should always be for people who can benefit from it, not just wasting another 3-4 years of your life at university, coming out. I mean, the debt I know it's not a proper debt, it's more like a tax, but forget that. But the debt they're coming out with, and it's like, I really, really don't understand that. I mean, when I employ people now, I rarely look at their qualifications. I upset one of my managers once because she's got first from Liverpool University, which is a good university. And when I told her after she got the job that didn't make a difference to me, in fact, I just looked over it, she was quite upset. She went, why? She goes, how hard I work for that? I said, but degrees now mean nothing to me. I can tell in 40 seconds if I'm probably going to give you a job or not. By the way, eye contact, by the way you conduct yourself, the way you talk to me, I can tell if you're going to be able to do this job. A degree on a piece of paper, I don't even look at anymore. We're devaluing degrees.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Nick, you sort of hit on something that I want to explore a little bit there, because you've helped, am I right in saying, thousands of Black and Asian young people throughout your career? Would that be a fair...
Thousands and thousands.
I wonder to what extent then you reckon that the Black Lives Matter movement itself isn't focusing on the issues that actually do matter to the Black and Asian young people you've come into contact with throughout your career?
That's exactly why I wrote the blog. I didn't write the blog to get my political stance over. I didn't write the blog because I think I know better. I wrote the blog because suddenly I heard of a group called Black Lives Matter. I researched them. This was in the summer after the tragic death in America. I looked into the organisation. I basically went on their website. This wasn't conspiracy theories. This wasn't YouTube channels. I went on their website. That's what people don't understand. Their words on their website. I read it and went, oh, I don't like the sound of any of this. This is almost everything I've been fighting against for 20 years. This is, if I wanted to come up with a plan to disenfranchise and to hurt black communities even more. This is what I would do. Defund the police, which they've admitted means get rid of the police. You go to any poor neighbourhood in any area in the country, even black neighbourhoods in this country, every single person, sorry, exaggeration, almost every single person you'll speak to will say, I want more police here. Because there's higher crime, there's higher antisocial behaviour in the poor areas. They want more police. When I worked for the council, that was the number one thing that residents constantly were telling me. Me and my team knocked on tens of thousands of doors over a 5-year period, probably maybe 100,000 doors, sometimes the same door more than once over several years. And the number one issue was always crime and wanting more police on the doors, wanting more and more CCTV on their street.
Reminds me of the Met Police saying, stop and search is actually supported by the parents of black children who just say, listen, I want my child to live.
I've got an answer for stop and search, what we need to do to do stop and search. So remind me that I'll come back to stop and search in a minute. But yeah, in these communities, they want better policing. So when I read they want to overthrow capitalism, what are you talking about? Capitalism in our country is not perfect by any judgment. There's still things we need to improve. But you know what? Society today is better than it was yesterday. Mm-hmm. And yesterday was better than it was last year. And last year is better than it was 10 years ago. We're heading in the right direction. People who are poor now are so much richer than when I was a kid. So we're going in the right direction. There's things we need to improve. Of course there is. That's why I do the work I do, to improve society, to improve communities, to improve people's lives. But don't tell me we need to tear everything down because it's so bad and we're going to rebuild it. Tearing down's an easy thing to do, but it's taken us thousands of years to get to where we are now. And these people are basically Marxists and revolutionists. Mm-hmm. And Marxism in our country has never taken hold. And the Marxists have always complained about the working class in our country. The working class really are stupid, because if they could understand what we're trying to do for them as Marxists, they would vote for us. But they never vote for us because they're just stupid and they really don't understand what's good for them. And that's a tendency to be what a Marxist says. How patronising. We've always rejected them, just like we've always rejected fascists and Nazis and racists. We've always rejected the extremes on the left and the extremes on the right because we're a decent country. Most countries in Europe still have a problem with the far right. We don't in this country. There's 100 nutcases spread across the country shouting about something, but 100 nutcases. We don't have political parties. So that's why I wrote the blog, because none of my friends knew about this. All my friends thought this was a slogan, Black Lives Matter. And who doesn't agree with Black Lives Matter? I agree with Black Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. Of course I do. But that's not... It's a Trojan horse. They're trying to sneak in Marxist ideas and communism and anarchy through the back door of we're fighting racism, and it's untrue. That's why I wrote the blog.
And you see that with Extinction Rebellion as well. It's masked.
More Marxists. Mm-hmm. More Marxists. They've just become a bit wiser and are using the internet better than anybody else at the moment.
And using these issues as well, because who could argue with racism, right? Who could argue with the environment being and the planet being improved?
Absolutely. It's a bit like saying, I'm going to print some badges, I'll send you one. I'm against evil. Who's going to argue about being against evil?
Yeah.
And these slogans mean nothing. Once you dig under the surface, and I don't even mean dig, once you click onto their websites and read what they say, it's plainly clear. But let's talk about stop and search. So I was at a conference maybe last year talking about knife crime and how we're going to tackle knife crime. And I did the section on stop and search. So I gave some stop and search, some serious thought. Stop and search is controversial by certain communities. Nobody likes being stopped by the police and search. I've been stopped many times by the police and search when I was younger, because I lived in a high crime area and I dressed in tracksuits and I was probably up to semi no good anyway. So I was stopped and searched many times. It's not an enjoyable experience. You find it quite insulting. But if you've already been told that they're only stopping people with blue eyes, and you get stopped and you've got blue eyes, well, that's it then. That's it. That's why I've been stopped. I've got blue eyes. It's part of this blue-eye racism. So stop and search is a great tool for many reasons. The first reason is working with kids on the streets, and we ask them all the time about that, carrying knives, knife crime, how they feel. We have lots of people, young people, some decent young people who say, I carry a knife. Why do you carry a knife? I'm scared. Mm-hmm. Have you got a beef with anybody? No, but I'm just scared. So the press itself is scaring young people into carrying knives. And then we say to them, have you ever been stopped? No, I've never been stopped by the police. Do you know anybody who's been stopped and searched by the police? No, I've never known anybody who got stopped. So therefore, young people are going out of the house with a knife. Under the correct assumption, I'll never get stopped and searched unless I pull it out, and then I might get into trouble. But up to that, no one's ever going to know I've got it. We need young people leaving a house with a knife going, oh, today could be the day I get stopped and searched for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
That will stop most of them carrying knives. But how do we get communities, especially diverse communities who have been brainwashed, that's all racism, how do we get them to accept stop and search? The answer is simple. We give them a choice, just like we do with schools. We say to them, we look at a council ward and we say to them, we're going to have a ballot in 2 months' time. Every house is going to get a ballot. And the ballot is going to say, do you want enhanced stop and search in your areas? And you answer yes or no. If you say no, things stay the way they are and we'll do hardly any stop and searches. If you vote yes, then we're going to be proactive and we're going to target people and we're going to stop and search them. When complaints come in because of that, we're going to say, the local people voted for this. We need to give the power back to the people. And when the police get criticised, the police answer is, this is what these local people voted for. Take it up with the community leaders because they voted for this. We need to take the police out of the politics of stop and search. And we need to give the power back to the people because that's where the power always should lie, is with the people.
Mm-hmm. Now, Nick, how much are the issues that affect Black and Asian young people the same throughout society? Going back to the conversation we had earlier about fatherless homes, does that have a lot to answer for? Do you believe that's at the heart of most of society's issues?
There's many issues, so it's a multi-layered problem. Fatherless household is a huge problem, but it's more than that. It's also about lack of education, poor parenting in that household, lack of aspiration, living in an area where no one expects you to achieve, living in an area where your only role models are local criminals, living in an area where you don't know anybody who works, you don't know anybody who gets up in the morning and goes to work. The only people you know who work are the local drug dealers, and they're being glamorized in music, on TV. I mean, here's a good example. Let's look at some huge hit series, Netflix series the last couple of years. One is Breaking Bad, about a decent, hard-working school teacher who becomes a drug manufacturer, and he's always, he's the anti-hero, he's also the hero. BBC big series is Peaky Blinders, glorifying violence from 100 years ago. We're always glorifying violence and glorifying being a gangster. Look at the Godfather films, which is my era. As a kid, I used to watch the Godfather films, and I wanted to be a gangster. I'd look at what they would. Yeah, this is fantastic. The respect you get, and a lot of the problems we've got in our criminality is about respect. If you've got young men growing up, and they can't gain respect in a decent way, which is doing well at school, which is looked down upon in our poorer communities. You're doing well at school, you're beaten up, you're called all these names because you're doing well. And then if you manage to get through that and then you get a decent job, you then look down upon as well that, this is not what we do. And then you move out the area and then suddenly you can't be a role model because you've upsticked and left and the role model's gone.
Traitor.
But the only exactly. And you can't blame some people for doing that. They want to better their lives. But the role model's gone then. So the only role models are still there, the drug dealers. Looking for respect, and that's what a lot of knife crime is about. A lot of my friends think knife crime is about drug dealers fighting for territory. Most of them are drug dealers involved in criminality, but they're not fighting over patches. They're fighting over Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah.
You said what about me on Instagram? You sang what song about my mum? And their friends are going, I wouldn't have that. If that was me, I'd have him, I'd stab him. And all of a sudden, these young men because of social pressures, because of respect, because of insults, they go out and commit a murder. And social media's got a lot to answer for that at all. I mean, I've been trying to think recently about how we sort of look into this more. And the only thing I need to buy a book, and the book I want to buy is The History of Dueling in the UK. Because that's what this is. It's a type of dueling. Excuse me, sir, you insulted my wife. Pistols at dawn, swords at dawn. It's the same issue. So how did we tackle people killing themselves with pistols and swords 150 years ago? And is there any lessons to be learned? I know it seems really different, but is there any lessons to be learned from that we can apply to the issues we've got now? Because we don't seem to be getting a handle on it at all.
Yeah.
The amount of young people dying on our streets is absolutely
it's heartbreaking.
Appalling.
Yeah.
And it's got to a stage now we don't even talk about it anymore. Now we don't even. It's not an out. It's not an outcry. There's no. Where's Black Lives Matters on this? Where were their protests?
We're just desensitized to it, aren't we?
Absolutely. We don't even talk about it. It's like another good issue is rough sleeping, especially in Manchester. 10 years ago, people would not complain about it. People were disgusted that we had 12 people sleeping on the street. We got now this, at the moment it's about 100, but that's going to increase when we start kicking people out of the B&Bs. But people step over them now and don't even break their stride. We've got a fellow citizen living in squalor, living in his own urine, dying on the streets through TB. They're dying of TB. And now we don't even break our stride as we just jump over the legs as we step over them. And again, desensitized. But we don't want to tackle difficult problems. We don't know how to tackle difficult problems. And the big issue we've got at the moment, we've had this for decades now, the political cycle in this country. Politicians hold the purse strings, and politicians want to get re-elected in 4 or 5 years' time. So therefore, and I've worked in a political organisation council, I've heard these conversations. I want something done about this now. Maybe next year, but I want it within the next 12, 18 months, because I'm up for election in 2 years' time, and I want to be able to say, look what I've achieved. I don't even care if it doesn't work. It just needs to look like it's working, because I'm up for election. We have no statespeople anymore now. We only have politicians, and politicians are involved in politics, and all politics care about is being re-elected. I was never a fan of Jeremy Corbyn, but I admired him in one way. Jeremy Corbyn would tell you what he thought and told you what he was going to do. And if you don't like it, don't vote for me, because this is what I'm going to do. But like Margaret Thatcher, this is what I'm going to do. This is my dream. This is how I'm going to take the country. If you don't like it, don't vote for me. Conviction. And I can handle people with conviction. They're statespeople. They're not snake in the grass. Let's get some public opinion, or they don't like it. Let's not put that policy out. If that policy is what you believe is the right thing to do for our country, you should put that policy out. Stop bending over backwards to be popular.
Yeah.
If I was a politician, it'd be like, this is what I'm doing. If I got into power, I would do everything in my first term that I wanted to do. And I'd say to people, if you don't like it, vote me out.
Now, I wonder, I mean, we could talk about issues like that, and I find them fascinating, and they are so serious. And I think you're absolutely right that the people just aren't talking about them anymore. They're not addressing them. They're too difficult. These topics are too difficult, so we can't discuss them. But that could be a recording in itself. But listen, I want to just read out the end of one of your critic articles, and it goes like this. It says, "I do hope that my lonely refusal to be cowed did add a little extra pressure. More scrutiny, press attention, and social media exposure. I am proud, you say, and happy that I did not bail. I know it takes courage to do this when the denunciations come, but ignore them. And when they're not made in good faith, the truth is a great shield, and the public are ultimately fair." And I was reminded when I read that of this one lady in Washington over recent weeks in Washington, D.C., who refused to raise a fist, to a mob around her in a restaurant, who they were all raising their fist and trying to get this one woman to raise hers. And you've spent the last decade encouraging people not to join gangs or the mob. I'm wondering, how much did did that experience influence your current determination not to be destroyed by one?
Absolutely. I mean, my whole experience growing up was the same. You know, I was heavily bullied and beaten up on a regular basis by older kids. And, you know, I lived on a tough estate. I've never, ever bowed down to bullies. I've been persecuted by bullies. You can't help that. But I've never bowed down. I've never been afraid of speaking my mind. And I've always been very opinionated. Hence why I got myself into trouble with that blog. What people don't understand is what the mob does is the mob pushes you a little bit more backwards than you wanted to go. So you take a little step backwards and they go, oh, you're quite happy going backwards, aren't you? We're going to push you a little bit more. So raise your hand and shout, Black Power. Oh, you've done that now, have you? Right. Now raise your hand and shout, hate Whitey. Oh, you did that as well. Now put a brick through this window. Ah, you did that as well. And they'll keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And eventually you'll find yourself in a position agreeing with things and doing things you never would have dreamt of in a million years you ever would have done. And you'll say to yourself, how the hell did I get here? And the answer is one tiny step at a time, because you never pushed back and you never said, no, this is it. This is what I believe. These are my morals. And the answer is no, I will not be doing that.
Now, Nick, given everything that we've discussed today, what would you like to see from the debate moving forward? How can we actually focus on the issues that you've addressed today, you know, such as homelessness, knife crime, that affect all communities up and down the United Kingdom? How can we actually start having a more sensible debate instead of these, you know, everything that you've just addressed that we're focusing on instead, and people like you getting sacked for writing blogs?
The first we need to do is we need to draw on the line this culture we have at the moment, this criticism, this, you know, Marxist ideology, this everything's racist. Oh, you don't like what I said? You're a racist. You don't like this, or you're a homophobe. We need to draw a line under that. And the biggest thing we're missing at the moment is political leadership. I voted in this government for change. I voted this government in for Brexit. And at this present moment in time, I've never been more disappointed in a government than the one we have at the moment. And I appreciate that Boris Johnson nearly died of coronavirus. I appreciate, you know, the big thing is Brexit, and they can't fight too many battles at the same time. I appreciate that. The only thing that's keeping me going at the moment is the 1st of January next year. I'm hoping that the Conservatives have a plan to end this culture war we're in at the moment. But I've realised we can't do this at the moment because we're still under European directives, we're still under the European Court. So let's not do much now because we'll just get dragged to European Court. Let's wait till the 1st of January and then we're going to do something about it. I may be dreaming. But until we can solve this silliness at the moment, we're never going to have the time, the energy, or the policy making to address the important issues that affect everyone's lives. It's as if we've just pressed the pause button on running the country at the moment. And COVID has not helped as well. All this, I can put all this down to COVID as well. We've all had more time on our phones. We've all been locked away. I never would have opened the blog if I didn't have more time on my hands. The idiots online wouldn't have tried to get me sacked if they'd not had more time on their hands. It's been a crazy year, but what we're lacking is political leadership, and I'm really not seeing it off anybody.
I mean, Peter Whittle, who I know you've spoken to,
great guy.
He's fantastic. He reckons there needs to be a new political party that's campaigning on these issues to just, you know, get rid of the culture wars and actually focus on the issues that matter to the British people.
Every time we put a vote to the British people, they always choose the sensible option. And let's say I don't agree with it. Well, by definition, it's a sensible option because the British people have voted for it. And if the Conservative government at the moment can't see this, can't see we went against the establishment and voted for Brexit, we went against the Labour Party and everything they were promised, all the free stuff, we went against that because we knew it was silliness and we voted them in. The red wall has got a big hole in it. If they can't see this And if they're not listening to the silent majority in the country, and they can't see how things are changing this year, then they're going to be destroyed. The Brexit party will take some of their votes off them. Another party will come through and take their votes off them. The Labour Party will start, has got a better lead now. They'll start taking votes off them. They represent the people. And I think politicians have really don't understand that anymore now. They put the party always ahead of the British people, and it can't go on forever. And we risk having a new party who then may be racist, who then may be Marxist, communist. We risk letting somebody else in on that ground because the main parties have conceded that ground and not fought for it. And that's what we risk.
Yeah, I mean, you could well be right. Well, let's see what happens there. But we need more voices like yours amplified. That's what we need. But speaking of your voice being amplified, where can people find you on Twitter if they're on that left-wing cesspit?
I'm on all the social media. You'll find me at Nick Buckley MBE, all one word.
Brilliant. Well, Nick, thank you very much for joining Reason today. I think that's been a fascinating discussion.
No, fantastic. I've enjoyed it. Anytime.
Thank you. I'm sure you'll agree with me that was absolutely fascinating, and you'll be desperate now to subscribe. So hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Share this if you've enjoyed it. And also, we're halfway, as I said at the start, we're halfway towards securing our fundraising target. So any help you can give towards that would be absolutely fantastic. Cheers.